If you keep dismissing your isolation as just your personality, you'll eventually forget how to genuinely connect with anyone. Yet, there's still time to break this cycle. In this video, we'll reveal 5 powerful connection rebuilding techniques that address the true roots of isolation so you can form authentic relationships that actually last. Plus, watch until the end to learn a spiritual practice that creates deep connection even when social anxiety feels overwhelming. Starting with isolation number 1. Have you noticed how people maintain isolation despite yearning for meaningful connections? Intriguingly, this contradiction stems from deeper emotional patterns rather than personality traits typically associated with isolation. What invisible barriers might be keeping individuals trapped in cycles of loneliness despite their desire for connection? Think of isolation like a fortress, built for protection but becoming a prison that keeps others out. Surprisingly, did you know prolonged isolation alters brain chemistry, reducing oxytocin and dopamine, the neurotransmitters that make social interaction rewarding? This appears in Eleanor Shellstrop from The Good Place, whose isolation stemmed not from disliking people, but from fear of vulnerability. While this protective mechanism shields us from emotional pain, it prevents healing that comes through authentic connection. What emotional need might your isolation actually be signaling? Try an emotional awareness technique called protective pattern recognition. This identifies the specific wounds driving your isolation, revealing how your behavior is a logical response to past experiences. To implement this insight, spend 10 minutes reflecting on when you felt the urge to withdraw, noting emotions and thoughts that preceded the desire to isolate. If anxiety tightens your chest before canceling plans, that's your protective pattern revealing itself. Remember, isolation isn't random. It's a response to something specific. Isolation number 2. Now that we understand isolation as a protective mechanism, let's explore how this safety behavior reinforces itself. Have you wondered why breaking free from isolation gets harder the longer someone remains disconnected? Surprisingly, our nervous systems adapt to isolation, making solitude feel safer than connection despite the emotional pain it causes. What physiological changes explain why reconnection becomes more challenging over time? Imagine isolation as quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. Interestingly, Dr. Stephen Porges, a neuroscientist at UNC, discovered that prolonged isolation rewires our nervous system, making social interaction register as a threat rather than an opportunity. While this sensitivity served evolutionary purposes to protect us from dangerous situations, it creates a cycle where isolation feels comfortable despite being harmful. What approach might help recalibrate this defensive system? Consider a neurobiological approach called safety priming. This method retrains your nervous system to experience connection as safe through managed exposure. To activate this reset, begin with 5 minutes of low-stakes interaction daily, like a brief conversation with a store clerk, then gradually increase duration as comfort grows. Start by ordering coffee, then making eye contact, then work up to asking how their day is going. Remember, your nervous system needs evidence, not arguments, to feel safe. Isolation number 3. Next, let's investigate the misleading signals our emotions send when attempting to reconnect. Have you observed how people interpret anxiety about social situations as evidence they're not a people person, rather than recognizing it as a normal response to disconnection? These uncomfortable feelings are often signs of social muscles atrophying from disuse, not indicators that solitude is your natural state. How might misinterpreting these signals keep people trapped in cycles of isolation? Consider social connection like a language. Without practice, you become rusty and conversations feel awkward. Studies show social skills deteriorate after just months of reduced interaction, creating a downward spiral where each awkward encounter reinforces the belief you're unsuited for connection. This appears in Dr. Sean Murphy from The Good Doctor, whose social difficulties aren't character flaws, but skills he never had opportunity to develop. While temporary withdrawal can provide healing during difficult periods, mistaking the resulting discomfort as evidence of a lone wolf personality perpetuates isolation. What would change if you viewed social discomfort not as a warning, Adopt a framework called discomfort reframing. This perspective shift transforms how you understand social anxiety, helping you recognize awkwardness as evidence of growth rather than a signal to retreat. To practice this, when social anxiety arises, internally acknowledge, "This discomfort means I'm growing," rather than, "This discomfort means I don't belong here." When feeling self-conscious during conversation, remind yourself, "These feelings indicate I'm strengthening connections." Remember, social discomfort isn't failure, it's reconnection muscles developing. Isolation number 4. With our understanding of social discomfort as growing pains, let's examine why creating meaningful connections often feels daunting. Do you find it curious how people can crave deeper connections while feeling overwhelmed by initiating interaction? Our desire for authentic relationships often collides with fears that our authentic selves might be rejected, creating tension between conflicting needs. How does this dilemma contribute to isolation that feels both painful and inescapable? Think of connection like diving into cold water. Anticipation creates more resistance than the actual experience. Notably, Dr. Vivek Murthy, the US Surgeon General, found that psychological barriers to connection are typically more powerful than practical ones, with fear of rejection activating the same brain regions as physical pain. While this protective mechanism evolved to help avoid social exclusion, it prevents us from taking risks necessary for meaningful connection. What approach might bridge this gap between desire and fear? Experiment with a technique called incremental vulnerability. This approach builds connection depth systematically rather than facing the overwhelming prospect of immediate deep sharing. To implement this, prepare 3 levels of personal disclosure for any topic: casual, moderate, and meaningful. Then gauge receptiveness before moving deeper, matching their openness. When discussing work challenges, start with, "Work's been busy." That's casual. Then, if received well, move to, "I've been struggling with a project," which is moderate. Remember, connection deepens through exchanges, not declarations. Isolation number 5. Now that we've explored practical approaches to overcoming social barriers, as promised, here's the spiritual dimension of isolation. Have you considered that isolation might serve a deeper purpose beyond psychological explanations? Across diverse spiritual traditions, intentional solitude has been viewed not as social failure, but as essential for spiritual growth and self-discovery. What if your isolation contains hidden opportunities for spiritual development? Imagine isolation as a cocoon, seemingly restrictive, yet potentially the environment needed for transformation. Neurological research shows periods of reduced external stimulation create optimal conditions for the brain to strengthen internal neural connections. This transformative aspect appears through Rey in Star Wars, whose years of isolation on Jakku becomes the foundation for discovering her Force abilities and identity. While unaddressed isolation carries health risks, viewing certain periods of solitude through a spiritual lens can reveal opportunities for developing self-knowledge. How might approaching isolation with spiritual curiosity reveal unexpected pathways? Embrace a practice called sacred solitude. This transforms periods of isolation from something to endure into opportunities for profound self-discovery. To harness this, designate 15 minutes daily to sit quietly without distractions, focusing attention inward to observe thoughts, emotions, and yearnings with compassion rather than judgment. Instead of scrolling through social media when lonely, try lighting a candle and writing about what your loneliness might be teaching you. Remember, isolation holds wisdom when approached as a teacher rather than an enemy. Which of these insights resonated most with your experience? Share in the comments below. If you're interested to learn more about self-discovery, then be sure to watch our video about social isolation is far worse for your brain than you realize to learn more about the power of you. See you there.